Right, should we crack on with it?
Yep.
Hello everyone at home, welcome to Gamesphere. This is I suppose it's a special edition because I'm joined with some chap that I found on the internet called Drew, who's lovely and I want to be just like him when I grow up. Hello, Drew.
Hello. I don't think you do want to be.
So, just for the sort of the last podcast of the year, I thought it would just be a good idea to just have a chat about some of the games we played this year and why we liked them. And I thought a good one to start off with, because I've been playing it earlier today, is Hades, which you very kindly gifted to me a couple of days ago now, is it?
It was, just before Christmas, wasn't it?
And when did you start playing Hades?
I started playing it, I think, when it came to Steam. I just looked at it and I thought that looks great and picked it up immediately. It was still it had a very short early access. And I played it a lot for about a week, and then sometimes you get those things where I just could not beat the final boss. So I was like, I'll put that aside for a bit and come back to it later. I've been playing it for a while, but it was in sort of two spurts, one at the beginning and one recently.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that will draw me into a game, I don't like this about myself if I'm honest, but one of the things that will draw me into a game right off the bat is how good it looks. And I'm not just talking about the level of fidelity
I don't
of the
think
graphics.
It's fidelity at all, is it? It's having a distinctive and well executed style.
Yeah, and Hades has that in spades. Like,
it really does.
It's the best looking game I've played in.
It is beautiful. It is just absolutely beautiful. It's the visual style. It's clearly intentionally. It's evocative of ancient Greek vases with the monochrome, usually yellow on black illustrations.
Oh yeah.
It's that, but brought to life, brought into color, and brought into motion.
Yeah, it's the colors that do it for me as well. And I honestly, I think it might even be the nicest looking game I've ever played.
Yeah, it's got the look of I think an 80s comic book, an 80s slightly arty comic book. It's got almost like a 70s palette. It's subdued but colourful at the same time.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. So for those that haven't played it, so this is you'd call it a roguelike game or a roguelite?
Roguelite, yeah.
Roguelite. Now I'll tell you what I'll do is there's a great video by, I think it's called, the channel's called Writing on Games, which I'll link in the show notes, which describe the difference between what a roguelike is and what a roguelite is, because that's one for the scholars, really. But one of the things about it is that you go through a dungeon until you die. You can unlock upgrades as you go, so you can unlock various weapons. You pick up keys, and some of these add-ons, as I understand it, they help you in the game. But once you die, you get debuffed of them. But some things you pick up, like the keys, they unlock weapons that you can then go back into the dungeon with better stuff. Is that right, Drew? Because I've only played about
the purple stuff that you pick up, the drops of Ribena, that you spend those in the mirror for sort of permanent upgrades. So I mean, this is one of if you've not done that yet, you need to do that. This is one of the things that generally distinguishes a roguelite from a roguelike is the permanent upgrades that you get that last between runs, right?
Yeah.
And some of the purists really don't like that. I was curious the other day, actually. I looked at, because Hades is overwhelmingly positively reviewed on Steam, right? I thought I'd check out some of the negative reviews just out of curiosity to see what they were saying. And some of the complaints were just simply that it has that permanent progression. Some people just do not like that.
Oh, see, with me, that's like that adds. That gives me a reason to come back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The thing is, I like many rogue-like games. One of my favourites is Heavy Bullets, which was quite big, I don't know, when it came out, 4 years ago or something. But the trouble is that you, even if you like it, you tend to bounce off it quite quickly because it just exists as it does. It's more of an art piece or something rather than a actual game with a beginning, a middle, and end. And sometimes if I just want to shoot stuff in a really fun way with an interesting gimmick, then I'll fire up Heavy Bullets or something similar that you'll find on the itch store. But like Hades.
Go on,
like I'm going to keep like coming back to Hades because I want to like I've just unlocked the Shield of Aegis, and I think that was the last thing I did before I came on with the podcast now. So I want
that is absolutely my favorite weapon, and that part of what makes Hades interesting. And I think I mentioned this to you before. Is sort of I always compare games to Morrowind, but comparing it to Morrowind, like everybody has a favorite way of playing, and they're all different. Like Hex, our friend Hex, loves the gun. Another streamer I watch, he loves the spear. Like I love the shit. Me and actually Toasty, we both love the shield, but even with that, we spec them in different ways. But yeah, I adore the shield. But everybody just sort of falls in love with a different weapon, and some people just will use whatever gives them the biggest reward at the time. They don't care which weapon, and that's kind of nice. But I think I think what distinguishes because you're mentioning other roguelites. There's a lot of action roguelites at the moment, right? It's a genre that seems to be popular with devs, and most of them are. You play them for a few hours and then you feel the edges and you think you've seen kind of, even if you've not finished it, you feel like you've seen everything that it has to offer.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes the difficulty curve is a bit wrong, or there's not enough upgrades, or there's not any upgrades that appeal to you. Whereas Hades just gets every detail in an action roguelite. Hades gets absolutely perfect. It is an absolute perfect realization of the form.
Yeah. Although I will say, you're going to want a gamepad with this one.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
When I did start off with the keyboard, and it's just when you've got, because the thing is, like when you're up against different enemies with different that maneuver in different ways. Sometimes you need that projectile button. Sometimes you need that dash button. Sometimes you need that main attack, or sometimes you need that heavy attack, the area of effect attack, or however it's modified through the game. I often find that you need to quickly maneuver between those four buttons quite quickly in a way that, I don't know, the keyboard layout, maybe I could have changed the keyboard layout or something like that in a way that it would have worked. But
I mean, essentially, Hades is kind of a microcosm of what generally gets called an ARPG, right? By which I mean like Diablo and my favorite Titan Quest. And I see Hades as like, because Titan Quest is a game. I love Titan Quest, but a complete game of Titan Quest, depending on how many levels of difficulty you do, because they lead into each other. It's not just like a difficulty selection. Can take hundreds and hundreds of hours, right? And to me, Hades is Titan Quest done in 1 hour. A run is about 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But usually in ARPGs, like usually you rather play with a mouse and keyboard, right? Because you want that directional control, which a mouse better affords. But with Hades, they've just nailed the controller controls to the point where it just plays better on a controller. And I think a lot of it is they've done auto aim in a very smart way. They've got just enough auto aim so that you're always so the game is doing what you meant rather than what specific. Because it's a bit hard to aim on sticks usually.
Yeah.
But the game just compensates for that just perfectly, such that it's better on a pad somehow, which is crazy to me. But I'm definitely a keyboard mouse player generally. I'll default to that. But yeah, Hades made me play on a pad.
Yeah, I mean the dash helps as well, so you can line yourself up nicely with the dash. You can do your attack and then dash away or dash. Do you find yourself just dashing around all over the place?
Oh yeah, no, you're constantly dashing. Yeah, everybody.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if I was doing that wrong or whether or not.
Even with the bow, you're constantly dashing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've got the bow at the moment, which I'm having a great time with actually, and sometimes I think I unlocked like the Poseidon one at the beginning. So that like there was a perk that I think it was Poseidon, and he gave me something on the bow. Oh, was it like rapid fire on the bow? And then I died, and then I didn't have that anymore, and I miss it so much.
Yeah. So then you search for that, right? You look for Poseidon. We should probably say, it's gods who give you the buff. So each room, they have different rewards, but a lot of the rooms will have a buff from a god, and it's all the different gods that you know from Greek mythology. And then they'll offer you a selection of boons for the weapon, and they're thematic. Like Zeus does a lot of lightning, Poseidon does kind of water. It's like knockback and stuff, and so on.
And Aphrodite does like the purple love stuff, and Dionysus. I mean, I love how they're portrayed. It's almost like the best parts of how like Disney portrayed like Greek gods and things like that. Like it does have that sort of like a little bit like.
Yeah, they're not as denatured as they are in Disney. They feel wild and savage, right?
Yeah, they're not as family friendly as Disney. They're still, but how they're characterized, I find I found that to be very. I don't know what the term is there, like sort of satisfying, I guess. Really, like they. And the artwork is like, I mean, I know I've already mentioned,
but is stunning throughout. And it's made by Supergiant Games, who made Bastion, right? And then what did they make about Pyre and a bunch of others? And I really kind of, because another one of the criticisms in the negative review, and I should say, like, the negative reviews are that they're 1,000 to 1 positive. But some of the negative reviews were just like, all the people liking this game, they're just Supergiant fanboys and that. I've never liked a Supergiant game before. I hated Bastion. I found it
looked good. I always thought it was a good-looking game.
It kind of looked good, but it was patronizing, clunky, and hand-holdy, and just all the things I don't like in games. But I can absolutely see how they got from Bastion to this. They've clearly just kept refining their practice till they got to the point where they could make a game as absolutely excellent as this.
Yeah. I mean, it's one that I'm going to be putting a fair number of hours into. I mean, you say that a game, like, how long would you say an average, go in the dungeons takes you in Hades?
Well, I only actually finished it as in, beat the final boss in the last week or so, and a successful run takes 30 to 40 minutes for me.
Okay, yeah, I think I say an unsuccessful run takes me sort of close to that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it. Like I'll jump in the game. I'll get myself killed. I got to be honest. I'm not very good at the game. Right, this is one of those things.
I'm not good at this kind of game, so it's not. The thing is, you get good at it.
Yeah,
I was playing our friend Toasty. He streams it quite often, and I was talking to him about how. Like, say, have you got to the second boss yet?
No.
Okay, so the first couple of times you get to the second boss, you're like, this is impossible. How can I possibly beat this thing? It's too quick. It does too many things, so on. And then 10 hours later, the second boss is utterly trivial to you. You'll absolutely assume you're going to beat the second boss easily, and then the third boss becomes the problem, and so on. And it's just you get the game is very good at, without you realizing, just training you to play it.
Yeah. Well, I certainly sort of look forward to that. Now, did I do the first boss? Because I'm not entirely certain. Is that the one where you have to survive for like 45 seconds or something? Is that a boss fight?
No, that's just Hades messing with you.
Yeah. Okay. When does I don't even know if I've done the first boss fight then.
The first boss fight is the Furies, Megaera. I'm not entirely sure how to say that. Megaera, Meg. He calls her.
And that just comes along as part of the dungeon.
Yeah, and then when you've done the boss fight, because of sort of the biome changes, you start off in Tartarus, I think, and then you move to another region.
Okay, and then when you die in the dungeon, do you go back and go through the bosses again, or do you?
Yep. The bosses they're varied after you've beaten them somewhat, but they're essentially the same bosses each time. It's the same setting, let's say, each time.
Okay. Well, I'll look forward to that. That looks pretty.
You should certainly look in the mirror and get some permanent upgrades.
I do need to do that. I'll be honest. I get a bit scared when I, with the boss fights, because people always tell me how difficult they are. But is that but is that just a case of people are always like sort of talking about the boss fight that they're currently on rather than?
I think so, yeah, because and this might sound patronising, but the boss fight that I'm sure you're stuck on at the moment, to me, is utterly trivial. Like, it's inconceivable that I would lose to that boss now. But when I was at the point you were at, same thing. Like, it's like very difficult. How do I beat this? And it's worth saying, like, I didn't beat the final boss. I say a run takes 30 to 40 minutes, but it took me 45 in-game hours to get to the point where I could beat the final boss.
Right. Okay. So I've got a long way to go.
70 runs, something like that.
But at least it's one of those games where I quite like that you can just drop in for an hour and get some time out that way. And I am really enjoying it. So I've only got a couple of hours under my belt, if I'm honest. So I've still got a long way to go on it. But it's definitely it was Arch Toasty's. Is it Arch Toasty's Game of the Year?
Yes, it was. Yeah. For me this year, it was a tie between Hades and CK3, really.
All kinds of terrible things can happen when you don't take care of your digital security, and that, of course, includes your passwords. The password manager used and trusted by the Destination Linux network is Bitwarden. Bitwarden lets you set up things like a PIN to easily access your password manager, as well as additional authentications such as master passwords and adding phrases to fingerprint security, all the things to keep your passwords safe. Bitwarden is the easiest and safest way for individuals, teams, and businesses to store, share, and sync sensitive data. Go to bitwarden.com/DLN to get started for free. To make things even better, Bitwarden is 100% open source. You can self-host and their code is audited. Go to bitwarden.com/DLN to get started for free. The $10 a year premium account gets you 1 gigabyte of encrypted file storage, 2-step login with YubiKey, U2F, Duo, Vault Health Reports, time-based one-time password authenticator storage and generation, priority customer support. So, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of GameSphere and for all round being a good egg to the Destination Linux network. Thank you very much. Well, speaking of which, should we move on to CK3, because that's one that I've not played, but I think it's going on the wish list.
I think I've got 1,000 and something hours in CK2.
1,000 and something hours. Do you know? I don't think I've got 1,000 hours on any game in Steam.
And CK3 came out when, like September or something, and I've got like a couple of hundred in that already. So, yeah, I mean, it's for those who like it. They're expensive, but you absolutely get your money's worth.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've put down, I think it's like, I don't know, quite a lot of money for the Hitman 3, knowing that I'm gonna get the hours out of that. But so with CK3, is the premise the same as CK2?
Yeah, it's an update to the same game essentially. Yeah, it's a more modern version of the same game.
So the full name, of course, being Crusader Kings 3.
Crusader Kings 3, yeah.
So you start off in where so does it take place in the whole world, or just Europe, or Europe and Asia?
Yeah, CK3 is such a hard game to describe, right? you can just sort of list features that it has. But I would say, like, with your interest in all things medieval and also in intrigue and court politics and stuff like that, you would absolutely love it, I think. But it's one of those. It's like learning Vim. You've got to get over the hump with it.
Yeah. So,
but yes, it's Europe, Africa in this one, and some of Asia. With a very strong implication, because on the right-hand side, the map is sort of torn off to very strongly suggest that the rest of China and possibly like Japan and Korea is coming later.
Oh, okay.
And you can play, it's deeply asymmetrical. So at the start of the game, you can choose to play as the Emperor of the Byzantine Empire, for example, who are, of course, massively powerful, the most powerful, single entity in the game. Or you can play as an independent count in Wales. The Byzantine Empire would have like 20,000 soldiers, and this count would have like 100. So it's deeply asymmetrical.
And so does you choose your province or territory at the beginning of the game, right?
Mm-hmm. And you can choose somebody who is so it's not just like Civ where you choose I'm going to be Washington or whatever, and I am America. You can choose to be the vassal of somebody if you wanted to. You could play a vassal within the Byzantine Empire if you wanted to, with the intention of just fulfilling that role, or with the intention of taking over the Byzantine Empire.
So, and with each of these territories, does each one have a different? So, what's the objective of the game then? I suppose it depends on who you choose, right?
Well, yeah, there's no win state really. It's just the game ends in 1453, which is the sort of generally agreed on end of the Middle Ages, the year when Byzantium fell. And it's just you absolutely set your own goals, which is another reason why I thought it's again I would compare everything with Morrowind, but it's Morrowindish in that regard. Your success. You're the only one who can judge your success because it's what you want to do.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because I mean, to be honest, in Morrowind, for example, I will build a character to just do Thieves Guild quests and never touch the main quest.
Yeah. Well,
Usually,
towards the end of my CK2 playthroughs, I really liked the way Islam worked with the governments. So, but I liked playing in Wales. So towards the end, I was playing as a Welsh count who very early on converted to Islam, and then my personal goal was just to convert the entirety of Europe to Islam.
That's amazing.
To Welsh Islam.
Welsh Islam.
Yeah. It was. We were culturally Welsh, but we were Islamic. It was beautiful.
Wow.
And it's a deeply systemic game, an emergent game, because it is just a very complex medieval simulator. And it simulates things like your religion will have various tenets, and you can reform your religion to change those tenets. But the religion is encompassed by its tenets, for example. So some religions, they highly value close sibling relationships and stuff like that. You can get really weird with it.
Yeah.
And as you saw in my end of your video, there's a religion where being nude is a virtue. So all of their adherents are just nude all the time.
Oh, I thought that was just a joke. That's
that's a real thing. Yeah.
Oh wow.
There's some branch of Jainism. And they just like being nude all the time. So you've got this to start off with. You've got this combination of your culture and your religion, which all bring different qualities and possibilities to the game. And then on top of that, you've got your government type. And then on top of that, you've got like what you want to do, what your intentions are. And then with your characters, because I've described it as a strategy game meets The Sims quite often, right? Because you're half concerned with the strategy, conquering the world or whatever you want to do, converting Africa to your religion, whatever. But then on top of that, you've got this family management thing, because you're playing for your lifetime. You play as a specific character.
Yeah.
And that part of the game plays very much like an RPG with stats and events and things you can do, and an inventory in CK2, not in CK3 yet. It plays like an RPG, kind of like The Sims, and you're managing your family and you're trying to maneuver so that your favorite child becomes your heir, and all that kind of stuff. So that's the stuff that makes CK3 amazing for me. The strategy game and the deep, complex simulation is the context. The core is that family management stuff.
So, how much do things like public opinion and foreign relations sort of come into this? Is this all the type of things that you have to juggle as part of your being a count or whatever?
If you've got powerful neighbors and they don't like you, that is a problem. That's a big problem. Or if you've got powerful neighbors that are a different religion to you, that can be a huge problem. In terms of internal stuff, the peasants don't matter at all. It's what you care what your vassals think of you.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I've been trying to play. There's a particular character in Africa that I like at the starting date, who at this period in history, she was culturally African, and there'd been an influx of like Arabian people, because Islam is a thing, and Arabs are starting to spread out. And her husband is of I think Bedouin or Arabic culture. And in real history, I think she adopted his culture and her line kind of ended. But in the game, you get the option to go, no, we are this culture, we are matriarchal, we're going to carry on our traditions. And you can sort of end up sort of fighting against him, which is what I've been trying to do. That was all a long-winded preamble. But what I'm trying to do is to conquer all of Africa and unite it under my religion, because there's an achievement and I really want to get it. I've been trying this I've probably been trying this particular thing for hundreds of hours, because Africa's very big. So you end up with vassal kingdoms, and you're the emperor, and you've got multiple empires, and you've got vassal kingdoms. And as soon as if one of your vassal gets a couple of kingdoms, because they can act in, they're all AI agents that can do their own thing. Like they can conquer land within your realm and stuff like that. Like they can go to war with each other. So if one of your vassal kings conquers another one of your vassal kings and then does another one, like they can actually get more power than you, and then they start to challenge the throne and stuff. So you want to keep your vassals powerful so that they can supply you with lots of money and troops, but you want to keep them weak so that they can't challenge you, and it's finding a balance between those things.
Oh, that's very Machiavellian.
Yeah, it really, this game makes you do the worst things for the best reason. And that feels amazing. Like you do things that you would even in a game. There were certain things I never thought I would do, even in a game, and you do them, and you believe you're doing the right thing. it's superb at making you feel things.
Wow, I mean, crikey, the way that you've just described it now, I've got to pick that game up. But the thing is, I know if I pick that game up, I'll commit myself to hundreds of hours.
It is the kind of you've either got to play it a lot or not at all. I think you can't really dabble with it. You could play. When I say that, you could play. You could do a game which lasts a week and then leave it for a couple of months. You don't have to play it all. It's not like CS where you have to play all the time to stay good. But you can't just play it for like 10 minutes a day or half an hour a day or something like that.
It's not like Hades like that.
No, it's utterly gripping.
It's wow. So yeah, that's. And to be honest, I mean, when I've seen gameplay videos of it, the thing is, I've seen a few gameplay videos of the Crusader Kings games, but I got to admit, I get lost in it, like in terms of like someone's trying to do something and someone trying to work through something else, and then I'm like, like it is kind of, it does seem a bit sort of difficult to follow. How do like battles work in it then? Because I've not really understood how.
Yeah, the way battles are modeled is actually quite complex, and that was all presented to the user in CK2, and nobody I knew understood it. I've got thousands of hours in that game, and I didn't understand how battles work. And in CK3, they've hidden a lot of that. But really, all that really matters is numbers. Like technology is a thing, but it's Middle Ages, so technology progressed quite slowly. Really what matters is number. You want to have like twice as many men as they've got, and then you're going to win. And that's generally how you're thinking.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
It matters more who you choose to attack, who you choose to murder so they can't attack you, who you choose to romance so they can't attack. It's like when and where matters more than, the actual battles.
Yeah. So when you say Crusader Kings III is like you put down Crusader Kings III as your game of the year, right? With Hades being a toss up with it, basically.
Yeah, I mean the reason I chose Crusader Kings III is because Hades I'll probably be playing for the next few years. Crusader Kings III I'll be playing until Crusader Kings IV comes out.
When was Crusader Kings II brought out?
I think it was I'm going to check because otherwise I'll just make something up. It was 2000 and something. I don't know. 2013.
Oh, so a few years, 7 years ago.
7 years, yeah. And I mean, it's a Paradox in-house game, so it gets so much DLC. But they do DLC right. People often look at the price of the DLC, and I think that puts them off. When like if you approach CK2 now, there's like hundreds of pounds worth of DLC for it. But it's first of all, the DLC has real content in it. Secondly, like all Paradox in first-party games, if you're playing the multiplayer, only the host needs the DLC, which is nice.
Oh, there's a multiplayer,
for example. Yeah, there's multiplayer. Yeah.
So how does the multiplayer work?
Essentially, you just play. You can play. Like Matt and I have played in various ways. You can play as neighbors and help each other. You can play far apart and have no contact with each other. You can play close together and compete with each other. We don't really like doing that. Or you can play like one of you is the vassal of the other one, or something like that. You can, however you want. You can essentially be any character in the game, and I think there are thousands of characters you can be at the start, and you can both be anybody.
Wow!
And unlike Civ, I compare it to Civ a lot. Unlike Civ, it's not turn-based. It just time is divided up into days, so it's kind of discrete units, but the game just rolls on. So there's no waiting for the other person to complete their turn type stuff.
How long does a multiplayer game take? That sounds like.
Well, again, because it's not turn-based, a multiplayer game takes the same length as a single-player game.
How long
but a single-player game of CK2 playing at speed 2, which is was a reasonable speed from start to finish, took about 80 hours.
80.
Yeah.
Wow.
CK3 is a bit quicker. It's difficult to compare because I play CK3 on speed 3 because that's what feels comfortable in CK3. CK2 I played on speed 2, so the game just goes a bit faster, but it's better designed for that. So I think a full playthrough of CK3 I would guess is about 50 hours.
Wow. Okay, but, so it is a commitment for two people then.
Yeah. I mean, Matt and I have never finished a multiplayer game, but often it gets to the point where you're just so dominant that like you take the victory, like I've won, because there's no actual win condition. you can kind of take your victory whenever you want, or just say, like, we've learned so much from this that we want to try playing in such and such a way.
Is there a lose condition?
Yes. If there's no heir of your dynasty, then your dynasty... So, for example, you can be in a situation where you are the king or queen of whatever, but when you die, because you've messed up the inheritance, you can become some distant relative who is of your dynasty, who's a nobody. So you can go from being a king to being, a lowly count who is the vassal of a vassal of a vassal, possibly. So that's a setback. But the only lose condition is if there's no living member of your dynasty, there's nobody to play. There's no landed living member of your dynasty, I should say. You can't play as just a peasant.
Can you just get invaded as well?
Yeah. Well, yes, but it'd be very unlikely that you lose all of your titles. Like, if you get invaded, you probably keep one of your counties, and then you would just be the vassal whoever invaded you.
Oh, right, okay.
And wars, it's not like Civ, where it's just like, I declare war on you, and I send all of my troops into your territory, and I beat you. You need a casus belli to declare war. And you can generally, there are certainly exceptions, especially later in the game when holy wars become a thing and stuff. But generally speaking, you go to war and you take a single county. You don't go to war and beat somebody in one war. If a significantly sized kingdom is at war with another significantly sized kingdom, that war is going to last generations.
Okay, yeah. So how does the path of history sort of does the path of history deviate a lot in the... So if you're just like a count in Wales, does like the trajectory of the Byzantine Empire change based on like random factors or any kind of tangential factors?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, given who the Byzantines are and what they've got coming over the horizon, it often plays out in a historical way, but only in the macro. In the micro, it's you get bits of Norway in England, you get bits of Burgundy in England, you get all kinds of weird oddities. But it does have it's got a thing where certain historical events will occur if the conditions are right. So, for example, if there is a powerful count in Normandy, and there's an Anglo-Saxon on the throne of England, then you will get the Norman invasion.
Okay, cool.
But only if those conditions are right for it. It won't just happen regardless. It'll only happen if the conditions are correct for it.
Will it always happen with William the Conqueror, or will it...
No, it'll just be whatever duke is. I said count, I mean duke. Whatever duke is of Norman descent and powerful at the right time, and blah blah blah.
Oh, so it could be like Pierre the Conqueror.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Oh, okay. Awesome. All right. Well, that's
what it really is a big complex story generating machine, because you don't really care. It is on the surface a strategy game, but what you care about is the stories it generates.
Yeah, so Game of Thrones, the game.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's a Game of Thrones simulator.
Yeah, see, the way that you describe it in certain avenues does remind me of Long Live the Queen, which, whilst Long Live the Queen is deceptively complex, this like almost everything about it goes on behind the scenes, and there's so many avenues that... I mean, if the thing about Long Live the Queen, to get an idea of how much that game can change, it's worth having a look at the achievements, because you'll look at some achievements and it's like you'll have like become the queen of the cats. So there's but because that is, but I mean with the Crusader Kings, the scope of that is unimaginably factors of magnitude beyond.
Yeah, well, it's very similar. Yeah, I think it's an apt comparison. But underneath, you've got essentially We Love the Queen, but underneath that, you've got a genuinely simulated Middle Ages. So that feeds into the events you get and stuff, and the events you get feed into, because you can manage the realm, through sliders and stuff. But then these events feed into your managing of the realm and stuff. So you get a lot of, when you're playing a particular monarch, which you are doing. You get a lot of events which are very akin to something like that. Long Live the Queen.
So this is going to be a very... I don't even know if there's an answer to this question, but how easy is the game? So I mean, I know that there's a huge complex rule base for it, but can you, assuming that you get a handle on that to some degree or another, how is the game basically a case of making decisions and seeing what happens, or is it very easy to enter a fail state?
It's very, very complex, but because it's simulating something that we're fairly familiar with, and because it makes sense, you can reason about it, right? So if you're presented with a decision, it's never a blind decision. It's, if I do this is going to piss off this person. If I piss off that person, they could invade me. You can absolutely reason about it. But it is hard. It's very hard to succeed. But the asymmetry kind of helps with that, because if you start as a count in Wales and you just get your ass handed to you in half an hour, play somebody bigger, play as France, or Francia as it was back then. Just play as somebody bigger and get to grips with managing the realm stuff, and then go for more of a challenge. So because I've played it for so long now, I always want a challenge. I always want to start as an independent count or as a vassal count. So I've got to work my way up. But you don't have to work. You can start quite powerful.
Awesome. Cool. Well, wow. I mean, every time we talk about Crusader Kings, it does make me want to play it all the more. I think I
think if you were to play it, though, I think you'd have to replace Hitman with it, so it had enough time.
Oh no! But Hitman 3 is coming out next year, early next year as well. Oh, it might have to be my post Hitman 3. I mean, it'd be a good change of pace.
Yeah.
Can you hire assassins in Crusader Kings?
It's weirdly got things in common, because it's the emergence and the stories that emerge from systems, right? That's one of the things that we both enjoy in games, and that Hitman and Morrowind and Deus Ex and Crusader Kings all have that in common.
Yeah, it's the enjoyment of the mechanics of the game, because there are many games. You see it a lot with those almost on-rails beat-em-up games that usually based on like a big movie franchise. They'll take like a big movie franchise, they'll just apply it to some like really generic-feeling beat-em-up game, and they'll layer a plot on top of that, and the game will fundamentally be a movie with intermittent, mediocre...
or the less cynical end of that is like, visual novels and that, games which just have a story, an authored story that they just want to tell you. Yeah. But the other end of that spectrum is machines that generate emergent stories, and I tend to enjoy that end of the spectrum more.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to live in that end of the spectrum more as well. Like and that's in a way that's kind of strange about Long Live the Queen, actually, because it looks like it's on one end of the spectrum, but is actually very much on the other end of the spectrum of that particular.
I mean, and CK3 shares that, in that the events are very visual novel-like. You'll get a little passage of text that you read, and then you have to make a decision. But of course, it's the emergence that's feeding into that makes that more what we like.
Yeah. This episode of GameSphere is brought to you by, of course, DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean recently announced their new app platform service, which is a solution to build modern cloud-native apps. With App Platform, you can build, deploy, and scale apps and static websites quickly and easily. Simply point to your GitHub repository and let the App Platform do all the heavy lifting. It has support for Node.js, Python, Go, PHP, Ruby, static sites, and Docker. DigitalOcean runs their app platform on their own infrastructure, so your costs are significantly lower than with other products. Plus, they built this new app platform on top of DigitalOcean Kubernetes, providing a smoother migration path so you can take more control over your infrastructure setup. As a listener of the GameSphere podcast and the Destination Linux network, you can get started for free. And in fact, better than free, because DigitalOcean is giving you $100 of credit when you sign up by going to do.co/DLN. That's do.co/DLN. We want to thank DigitalOcean for sponsoring this episode of the GameSphere and for generally being kind to the Destination Linux network. Thank you very much, DigitalOcean. That's wonderful. Let's talk about my game of the year. Have you actually managed to have a go at Shapes?
I've not. No, it looks cool, but I haven't played it yet.
Shapes. So I won't spend too long on it because I have talked about it on GameSphere before. But since this is good games that we've played this year, I really did quite enjoy Shapes. So I assume you're familiar with it. That it's actually a game that they're not even shy about it. That is based on Factorio, but it
Yeah.
has this much cleaner style. So you start off with. And then the way that it builds up in a very easy to get into way. So there's no plot, no pretense. They've taken away every, it literally is like we were talking about with the spectrum of how plot based a game is. Like this is zero plot based. This is fully on the one
100% systemic.
100% systemic. So like level 1 will be. It'll ask for like an uncolored circle, and you go out, you find an uncolored circle, you pipe that through to using your factory conveyor belts, and then it'll be like, okay, I want a semicircle, then I want a semicircle on the side, then I want a red semicircle on the side, then I want a red semicircle attached to a blue semicircle, and then I want a red semicircle attached to a yellow square, and all this kind of stuff, and it builds it up and up and up until you get some rather very interestingly complex shapes. But it does feel kind of like the thing is with it, the trick with this game is that you build this factory and you expand this factory and you expand this factory, and when you think of the game when you're not playing it, you think that it should be easy, right? You have one big factory that makes like all the so you get your 3 primary colors, right? If you're going to color an item, you have your 3 primary colors, and it works like with the visible spectrum of light, and so you add what is it that makes yellow? Is it blue and green?
Red and green in light. Blue and
red
green.
and green in light. Yeah,
I think it's red.
So I always get that mixed up. And then but in order to do white, you mix all 3 together. So you'd think, all right, so there are some things that need to be coloured white. So I'm going to have one giant big factory that just makes the white colouring to colour the shapes. And then I'll have one that does yellow, one that does teal, one that does, all the various variations of it. Then I'll do, okay, so I'll need like a factory area that does rectangles, and then I'll need one factory area that does semicircles and one factory area that does slightly more complex shapes. And you think, okay, you build these giant factories, and then when the game asks you to do a particular combination of these shapes, it's easy. You just change the conveyor belts, change the piping around, and it's no problem, right? You've got big designated areas that do the things that you're supposed to do, and you just like plug it through. Never works out like that.
Yeah,
you always tack a bit on it.
It's the game is entirely emergent and systemic, which means that the difficulty emerges from that emergence, right? So again, same with TK3.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't matter how much you plan for it, the scalability of it. Sometimes it's tempting, but I've never had the guts to actually go ahead with it, is to actually wipe away everything and then start rebuilding from scratch from time to time, which I suspect is the smart thing to do. But the thing is, it's still tempting to just jury rig everything together, to just sort of
the wiping away and starting again is the right thing to do, but psychologically very hard, right?
You've already committed to building this incredibly...
Which kind of says a lot about humanity, right? Sometimes the solution is obvious, but we've done so much work making it this way.
It's like
if we just go around the edges a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like having a lamp with a dodgy light bulb or like a dodgy connection. You go, but just by tapping it, you'll fix that little flicker from time to time. You should just fix the wiring or change the light bulb or something. But no, as long as you can, you just keep sort of doing the bare minimum it takes to fix it.
Our friend Matt, for a long time, his CPU fan would not start spinning up when he turned his computer on. So every time he turned his computer on, he would have to manually start his CPU fan spinning. And that's exactly what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. That's exactly it. One of the things I do like about it is that it's so crisp and clear. I do value, and I don't know if this is an age thing. I swear it's happened more as I've gotten older. That games that are very clear about what they are, where their buttons, like on the very superficial side of things, you can look over there. That factory's generating green because a load of green stuff is coming out of it. Like it's just
Well, that to me is good design. You said like it's completely non-narrative, it's completely systemic, and so therefore it can be. This person has looked at Factorio and said this doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to have a real-world analog. It can be completely abstract. And if the game is completely abstract, why not make the presentation completely abstract? Like that's good design. Thinking, understanding those things working together is good design, I think.
Yeah.
So the game just in its visual aspects communicates what it is to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's somewhat similar. It rings true to like, have you seen Mini Metro?
Yeah.
It's that of so Mini Metro is to like Transport Tycoon as Shapes is to Factorio. One of the things I do like about Shapes is that you actually get to play it on the website. If you go to shapez.io, it gives you like quite a fair chunk of the game that you can just play through your browser because it is an
open source game. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, it is an open source game.
I mean, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, and it was by design, so you can pick it up. You can pick it up on itch. You can pick it up on Steam. You can even pick it up in the Snap Store. Popey actually put it up there himself. It recently had a pretty big update where at level 20 you get introduced to something called wires, which I have no idea. That scares me a little bit.
I love systemic games where they introduce something and your reaction is, I've got enough to think about at the moment. I'm going to ignore that.
Definitely, yeah. But
ignore that until I feel much more comfortable.
Yeah, and one thing about the game that I always want to bring up is the soundtrack is just amazing. It's available by, I think it's made by someone called Pepson, and they've got a Bandcamp page where they actually have the album that you can listen to, and it's like one of those like like those like YouTube live channels where it's like lo-fi hip hop beats to chill out and relax to. It's a bit like, it's kind of that kind of vibe, and I love it.
I've not heard the music, so this isn't. I'm not disparaging the music, but it would have been nice if the music in the game had been generated by the machine. Like like in Portal. I think in Portal 2, where you get those. I can't remember. There's certain blocks that make noises when they're activated, and depending on how and where and in what order and at what time you activate them, they'll sort of make a tune together. They go like boo 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 boo, depending on where you put them down. Like if the machine made noises on when things happen, and that all became musical, that would have been amazing.
Crikey, that would have been happen. Oh well, that's something for the what do you call it? GitLab or wherever. I don't know where it's put together. GitLab, GitHub. But
let's see if we can find out while you're talking about it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, to me, it is everything that a game does right. Like, you got the soundtrack on Bandcamp. It's the chap did decide to open source it, even though it's like it's not necessarily a community project. It is done by a single person, so it's got that very clear sort of clear vision. But yeah, it's the thing is as well is that it is quite a straightforward game, which is to its credit, because it just sort of like, exactly what you've got to do, and the growing complexity of the game that you create, like you create the complexity, so you sort of understand this quagmire, except you sort of realize it almost demonstrates the limits of your own mind, because it's like, why would I do that? Why would I make such a like terrible machine here? And
I love those. This is the case with Factorio. Like you'd be playing it late into the night and making your machine and making your production line, and then you wake up in the morning, you think, I'll carry on playing that, and you look at what you did and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely my game of the year. To be honest, it's been this year, I feel in general has been much better than last year.
Last year, sorry, go on.
Yeah, last year I really struggled to come up with a game of the year, because most of the games I played were from last year, but there have been a few real good ones. I'm probably going to talk about it in a later podcast, but Raft was great.
Yeah, Raft was cool. Yeah, I feel the same way. I think last year was a particularly bad game, at least for the kind of games that I like. It might have been good for other people, but this year, with CK3, I mean, that's absolutely a hit for me. Hades, and I've just picked up. Just before Christmas, I picked up Sakuna, which is a Japanese RPG game that's half fighting demons and half farming rice. And Matt's been playing it. He was talking about it, and that's another superb game. At least I'm only 10 hours in, but like that's another game that I'm in love with. So yeah, 2020's bad year for the world, but good year for games for me.
God, if we needed a year where there was good games, it was this one.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Raft's had a few updates, so I need to get around to like working out, all about that. But earlier in the year, was it earlier this year we were playing Raft?
I think it must have been, right. It's me, you, and Hex, right? Made an absolutely absurd vote.
Yeah, that's
beautifully absurd.
It is.
That was largely your doing. I think you were chief architect of the beautiful monstrosity.
Well, I mean, you say credit, I say blame.
Hex was the explorer. You were the naval architect, and I was the cook.
Oh dear me! But that's a heck of a game. Is it still in early access?
I'll have a look.
What's quite good about Raft is that it does play on GeForce Now.
It is still early access, yeah.
Still early access. So maybe it'll be the game of the year when it comes out. Whenever that is, it might be one of those games. It's kind of interesting that like sometimes a game will be brought out, and they'll just add bits onto it as you go, and sometimes a game will be like in perpetual early access only because they feel that it hasn't reached.
Well, I mean, it's a bit of almost a cliche to talk about, but the idea of a game just being released and done is way in the past, right?
Yeah.
But all games are to some extent, gaming as a service in the sense of they're constantly updated, not in the bad sense. So yeah, I mean, why is, for example, Dota 2 not considered an early access game, given how much that changes, month to month?
Yeah,
it's effectively early access, right?
How big was that day one patch of Cyberpunk? It was wasn't that like 17 gig or something like that? That was
yeah.
And to be fair, you'd think in another year that would be a catastrophic. And don't get me wrong, there have been bits and pieces of that game that many have considered catastrophic, like the epilepsy thing, and that's. But when it comes to just dropping a multi-gigabyte day one patch.
Well, it was pulled, wasn't it, from the PlayStation? It was
the flashing lights.
The game. I think just because it was so buggy. Yeah, it was just so many complaints that the game was just pulled from the store. Which, I mean, but the people I know who are playing it are really enjoying it on PC. I'm sure it's worse on consoles, but
yeah. I mean, if I was going to pick it up, I would probably be tempted to pick it up on Stadia.
Yeah, I know you like Stadia a lot, but my problem with Stadia is it's the console versions of the games. I think I'd be more inclined, if I was going to go the streaming route, to do it on GeForce Now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe GeForce Now as well. I mean, when it comes to is Cyberpunk different from console to PC? I mean, obviously some games are, but some games...
I mean, it's always going to be. I mean, for starters, you're never going to get an FOV slider, and that doesn't bother some people, but it bothers me quite a lot. And that, just the control over the settings and that kind of stuff, control over controls. I mean, console input support in terms of mouse and keyboard never feels like PC mouse and keyboard. I think there are differences. It's whether you're sensitive to those differences or not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I bounce between the two, so it's I don't have anything.
I also think the other. I think GeForce Now is going to be with us for longer. Honestly, that's just completely pulling that out of my bottom. But Google do not seem committed to Stadia.
I know that's like quite a quite a widely held belief, but considering that Google do own first-party studios, that sort of indicates to me that they're somewhat serious.
But is there any synergy between that fact and the fact of Stadia? Like, are those people even talking to each other with a company that big? Like, we don't know. We've been in situations like that before, and it's not led to anything.
But have Google dropped anything? What paid services have Google dropped? Because I know that people often list a lot of the free services that Google dropped. But have Google dropped anything that's...
what was the Reader thing called? Was it just called Google Reader?
Google Reader, that's it, yeah.
Was that paid? I mean, I never actually use these services, so they don't stick in my memory. It's just that Google don't seem to be doing the kind of things that you would be doing if you wanted the thing to be a success. As you know, for example, Epic absolutely are with their store.
Yeah, well, they're ruthless. Are Epic. It's well, I mean, time will tell. Is the short of it? Because
I'd just be more comfortable buying it via GOG or buying it via Steam and playing it on GeForce Now, and knowing that if the service goes away, you've still got the game. Yeah, I know, I'm not on about perpetual ownership. We own. I don't care after a couple of years, but for those couple of years, you want to be able to play a game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if Stadia's dropped within the next few years. Maybe within the next. I don't know. I mean, the Google Play Store has been going now for a while, and that's going from strength to strength. Although, does the monopoly that they have help? Probably.
Well, I mean, they just make an absolute butt ton of money through that, right? I mean, it's 90-something% of mobile devices are Android, and they're getting a cut of every single app sale. Compared to Stadia, which, I mean, it was not well. I mean, I thought it was quite good. I agree with you. As a service, I think it's quite good. But it was not well received. Its press was terrible. It's got quite a limited library. There's no reason for somebody like me with a PC that can play the games natively. There's very little reason to use it. They're not doing, they're not doing the kind of things Epic are doing to try and just, sort of tempt you on there. It just doesn't seem like. It doesn't feel like a success. I think the idea of streaming will be certainly a part of gaming in the future, but I don't think that Stadia realization doesn't feel like that to me. GeForce Now feels like I've not actually used GeForce Now. I don't particularly care about streaming for myself, but it feels like more secure.
You own the game because you buy it on Steam, GOG, or Epic. And maybe the Origin store as well. The video definitely touches a few more bases, and you can still play it on your TV, I believe, with the Shield.
I think just more in terms of that having a big library, like Stadia, to be a success, it's got to for some people be a viable replacement for what they do now, right? If you're thinking about my next PC might be really low spec because I only need the high spec for gaming. You've got to be able to play all the games you want to play on Stadia, right? And if you can't, then you can't do that. And in which case, you might as well stick with what you've got, kind of thing.
I've been playing various racing games to try and get a comparison between the two services. And whilst basically once you've been playing a game on either platform for more than a couple of minutes, you sort of sink right into it, and it. All the differences and anything else fades away. But Stadia, in my experience, just from a technical standpoint, and I know that Stadia requires a higher connection, so there's probably some, something to do with that. And also with GeForce Now, GeForce Now can be played on some very, very slow connections, albeit with a heck of a lot of compression, whereas Google Stadia will be like, if it can't play it to a minimum level of satisfaction, it'll just throw you out.
Yeah, right.
But
I mean, this is all the streaming services working out what works, right? I mean,
this is all very new.
Probably the one, but I mean, streaming as an idea is very interesting. I've not liked any of the actual instances of it yet so far.
I mean, I've loved every of all of the instances of it so far, but I think one of the things that is quite interesting is how, and this is maybe possibly an indication of Stadia being here to maybe stay, is that they've added some new YouTube bits and pieces into it, so you can actually stream directly to YouTube, so you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, and that seemed to work. There was a little bit of microphone warbling, but given that they've just rolled that out, that seemed really cool.
Yeah, the microphone, the audio on it, and I'll put a link to that in the in the show notes if anyone wants to see just an example of what it looks like. But it's you can literally set up a stream through the gamepad controller. You just go to a stream option in the menu, and then you can stream it. You can then decide you just stream in the game. You can stream the voice. You can just stream your voice. You can stream the party. Who's basically so you select your microphone. You select your inputs basically. and then you just click go. You sync up obviously your YouTube channel.
I mean, there was you mentioned there was no face cam, but I'm sure they'll add that. But when I'm watching a stream of a game or a let's play of a game, I never want a face cam. I want to see the game, so I'm fine with that. If it normalizes not having a face cam, I'd love that.
Yeah, I see sort of both sides of that kind of thing. Actually, one of my Let's Plays that's coming up, the Deus Ex Invisible War, doesn't have a face cam because it's all done in 4:3.
It's not that I don't love your face. You have a very beautiful face.
Oh, thank you. It's just that it's 4:3, and like fitting a face cam on a 4:3 is like, ooh. When you got the width of the widescreen, you can just pop it on the side and it sort of sinks away if you're not interested.
Is Invisible War not widescreenable? I've not played it for a while.
So it gets a bit complicated because you can rummage through the INI files and set a widescreen resolution, which works up until a point. But there was one time when I went into a cutscene where it forced the 4:3 resolution back in. And then and then for some reason, no matter what I'd edit in the INI files, I could not get back into that 16:9 resolution. It was like I don't know if it was a bug or something.
I was actually this is sort of the video you made a while back, and you did it in 4:3, and you talked about like resolutions is something we should choose. It should be like an artist choosing their canvas, right? You don't always choose the same shape canvas, and like maybe 4:3 is valuable for some things. And I think maybe playing a game that was designed in 4:3 and 4:3 makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking over it and just watching it on a screen, it doesn't like. Sometimes I did sort of query the idea of what should go on the side? Should I black bar it, or should I actually force the resolution to 4:3 so it fits appropriately, or should I use a standard resolution with a standard aspect ratio? And then sometimes they put like a blurring effect, but I always found that off-putting.
Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah,
I don't like that. I could just
understand why they do it, like on the news, if they just want to fill, they don't want black bars on the news on something, like I understand why they do it, but on YouTube and that, I do not want that.
No, well, I've seen that more and more. They just use a static image, which to me probably makes the most sense.
I'd rather the video just be the resolution that it is, and then I can choose what to do with it.
Yeah, well, that's what I've set with the Deus Ex playthrough. Because it just seemed to make the most sense, and also if you're watching it on a phone, not all devices are 16:9. Some are like 9:16, or I mean, are there still monitors out there that are 16:10? I used to have a 16:10 monitor.
There are a few, not many.
So just like adding in, I think in some ways, a part of me kind of wants to like if I was forced into a 16:9 ratio. To just do black bars, that just seems to make the most sense. But then if you're watching it on a narrower monitor, then you just get you get that effect where it's just a square in the middle of the screen. You got a black border all the way around. That just looks terrible.
I think make the video the resolution, because if you want to do that blurry thing in the background or you can do that in FFmpeg if you want to. You can process the video yourself.
Yeah, but it doesn't add any. It doesn't like. Yeah, there's no. It just doesn't. I just don't like how it looks, to be honest. I think it distracts.
No, I don't.
It's just So, anyway, we've hit our hour mark. So, thank you very much for joining me, Drew. It's a pleasure, as always, to chat with you.
My absolute pleasure. Yeah.
You do actually have a YouTube channel where you actually have some really interesting videos. So
not many of them, and they're very, very, very infrequent.
But there's I quite like the one where you just did the history of computers.
I really enjoyed making that one.
Yeah, that was great. You do some swearing in it, don't you? There's a phrase that I'm supposed to use, and I've completely forgotten it. For what happens if I'm going to link to something that has a bit of swearing in it? It's like you might want to use headphones for this one, or it's something like that.
Parental discretion is advised.
Parental discretion is advised, but yeah, it's a good chance.
Quite sweary.
Yeah, but I'll link it in the show notes because it's and also you one video which you did quite well, particularly in Mastodon and the Fediverse, was you're compiling how to compile something from source.
Yeah, was that the DWM one? Or was that something else?
Was it NNN?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember. I forgot that I'd made that one. Yeah.
That was that was really useful. So it certainly helped me because I learn how to compile something every couple of years, and then I forget because I never do it. So it's a nice refresher because it doesn't take too long, but you do it in such a way that.
I mean, that's what I try to do videos about, is things that I remember struggling with a few years ago that now I find routine and easy. I might as well make a video and help people. I like to make helpful videos.
But yeah, okay, cool. So thank you very much, Drew, for joining me. Thank you very much, you good folks at home, for joining me. And that's about it for today. I've been Chris Ware, and you've been watching The Game Sphere. Outro.
Is that the outro? You're going do.
Yeah, that's new outro.
Still love it.